Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving deep into a powerful story about money, power and morality. The title of this story is The CEO Who Lost 500 Million to Save His Soul, the Burkina Faso gold mine story. This story takes us from the heart of Africa to the financial centers of the United States. It is a story about a man who chose integrity over profit and how that decision connects to the larger changes happening in our world right now. Imagine you are the head of a global mining company. You control billions of dollars. You have power, influence and luxury, but then one day the government of a small West African country tells you that your company has taken more than its fair share. They accuse you of exploiting their land and people. They demand justice. Now you face a decision. You can fight back, use lawyers and politics and protect your profit, or you can admit that maybe they are right and that integrity is worth more than gold. This story represents that moment. The CEO who chose to walk away from $500 million in assets rather than continue a system that was draining a nation of its wealth. His choice shocked the financial world, but it also inspired many people across Africa and beyond, because it was not just about money, it was about the soul of business. Let's start by looking at the background in Africa, especially Burkina Faso. Burkina Faso is a small landlocked country in West Africa, rich in gold but poor in infrastructure and income. For decades, international companies have mined its gold. These companies often came with promises of development, jobs and progress, but over time local people began to notice that while gold left the country, wealth did not return. Most of the profits went abroad, while villages near mines still lacked electricity, clean water and schools. The government that came to power in recent years under Captain Ibrahim Traoré decided that this had to change. They looked at the contracts signed by previous governments and found that many of them were unfair. Burkina Faso was getting only a small share of its own gold revenue, so the government began to take bold steps. It started demanding higher taxes, new ownership stakes and stricter control over mining operations. Some companies agreed to negotiate, but others refused. The government accused some of hiding profits or underreporting exports. One of the most dramatic moments came when authorities detained several foreign mining executives in the capital Ouagadougou. Reports say that these executives were questioned about the missing value of gold exports worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Some were released after negotiations. Others were forced to return large sums or hand over mining rights to the government. The message was clear: Burkina Faso would no longer be a silent partner in its own exploitation. Among those affected was a major gold company led by a well-known CEO. For privacy, we will call him Mr. K. He had invested heavily in the region, believing it would bring long-term profit, but when the government began demanding back payments and new rules, his board pushed him to fight back. They wanted to sue the government or threaten to withdraw, but Mr. K felt differently. He had spent years in Africa and had seen the poverty surrounding the mines. He realized that the system itself was flawed. He made a bold decision to cooperate with the government, to disclose company records and to accept a new deal that gave the country a bigger share. This decision cost the company around $500 million in lost revenue and cancelled contracts. The stock price fell. Shareholders were furious. They accused him of weakness. Some called for his resignation, but Mr. K stood by his choice. He said that if a business destroys the very communities it operates and then it has no future, he believed that moral responsibility mattered more than short-term profit. Now this may sound like a rare act of conscience in a world driven by money, but it also reflects a bigger shift happening across Africa. In recent years, many African nations have started rethinking their relationships with foreign companies and former colonial powers. In Mali and Niger and in Burkina Faso, we are seeing governments asserting control over resources. They are nationalizing assets, rewriting laws and forming new alliances. African leaders are saying that the era of dependency is over. This is not just about gold, it is about dignity and sovereignty. Africa is home to some of the richest natural resources on earth: gold, diamonds, oil, lithium, and yet it remains one of the poorest regions. The new generation of leaders wants to change that. They are ready to take economic risks to build independent systems. Even though this brings conflict with foreign investors, they see it as necessary for long-term freedom. Now let us turn our attention to the United States, because while Africa is reclaiming control, the United States is dealing with its own moral battles in the corporate world. In America, the problem is not exploitation by foreign powers but the corruption within big corporations themselves. In recent years we have seen major scandals involving fraud, bribery and unethical business practices. Some companies have made billions by cutting corners or deceiving the public. A clear example was seen when McKinsey & Company, one of the most respected consulting firms, agreed to pay over $120 million to settle charges that it was involved in a bribery scheme in South Africa. This was not just a local issue. The investigation was led by the U.S. Department of Justice and revealed how American companies can become entangled in unethical practices abroad. It showed that corruption is not limited to any one continent, it is a global disease. In the United States, public trust in big business has been shaken. In industries like banking, technology, pharmaceuticals and defense, people are asking whether corporate America has lost its moral compass. From the opioid crisis to environmental pollution to privacy violations, companies have faced questions about what they value more, money or people. Even the stock market now reacts not just to profits but to ethics. Investors want to know whether a company is sustainable, transparent and socially responsible. This changing mindset is creating pressure on CEOs. They are expected to do more than deliver profit. They must protect the planet, respect workers and act honestly. In some cases this leads to conflict between boards focused on quarterly earnings and leaders who want long-term integrity. In that sense, the American CEO faces a test similar to Mr. K in Africa. The question is the same: how much are you willing to lose to do what is right? When we compare Africa and the United States, we see two sides of the same global struggle. In Africa, the issue is exploitation by outsiders. In the United States, the issue is self-corruption, but both are about the same moral dilemma. What is the value of a human soul in a world built on profit? Africa is saying we will not sell our future for short-term deals. America is starting to realize that endless greed destroys trust and society. In Africa, change often comes through revolution. In the United States, it comes through regulation and reform, but the goal is similar: to create a fairer system where wealth does not come at the cost of humanity. Africa's leaders are saying we must own our resources. The U.S. public is saying we must own our responsibility. Both are redefining power in moral terms. Let's look at some numbers to understand the scale of what is happening in Burkina Faso. Gold makes up more than 70% of export revenue, but local communities see less than 10% of the benefit. The government now insists that it should own at least 30% of every new mining project. In Mali and Niger, similar moves are underway. These policies may scare off some investors, but they also attract new ones, especially from Asia and the Middle East, who are willing to work under fairer terms. In the United States, meanwhile, the corporate accountability movement is growing rapidly. The Securities and Exchange Commission and the Justice Department have increased oversight of foreign and domestic companies. Shareholders are demanding transparency on political donations, environmental impact, and labor practices. The moral tone is shifting slowly but surely. Returning to our main story, let's reflect on what happened after Mr. K's decision when he walked away from that $500 million loss. Many thought his career was over, but something unexpected happened. Public opinion began to change. People admired his courage. News outlets described him as a man who chose integrity over greed. He was invited to speak at global forums on ethics and leadership. His company, though smaller, regained credibility and began attracting investors who valued honesty over hype. In Burkina Faso, the government too gained new confidence. It announced that gold revenues would now go toward building schools and hospitals. Whether that promise is fulfilled remains to be seen, but symbolically it marked a turning point. The idea that a single decision by one CEO could influence both business ethics and national pride shows how interconnected our world has become. It also reminds us of a deeper truth: money can build empires, but it can also destroy them. What sustains nations and people is trust and fairness. Without that, everything else collapses. The CEO who lost $500 million may have lost wealth, but he gained something priceless: he regained his soul. The story also invites us to question our own role as consumers and citizens. Every time we buy gold jewelry or use a smartphone, we are connected to the global mining system. If we demand ethical sourcing, companies will follow. If we stay silent, the exploitation continues. Change starts not only in boardrooms but also in our choices. In both Africa and the United States, the next decade will define the moral direction of capitalism. Will it be driven by conscience or by greed? Will business leaders become partners in justice or remain prisoners of profit? The answer will determine not just who becomes rich but what kind of world we leave behind. This story matters because it shows that integrity is not weakness, it is strength. In a time when headlines are full of corruption scandals, wars and greed, stories like this remind us that good leadership still exists. It reminds us that one person's moral stand can spark global reflection. As we close, think about this: a CEO in a suit in a skyscraper and a soldier in uniform in a dusty African capital may seem worlds apart, but both represent two sides of human power. One leads through money, the other through authority, but both can be tempted by corruption and both can be redeemed by conscience the moment they choose right over wrong. The world shifts a little toward balance. So next time you hear about a company losing millions or a government taking control of its resources, remember there may be more to the story than economics. Sometimes it is about saving something invisible but essential: the human soul. If you enjoyed this deep dive, make sure to like, share and subscribe. More stories like this are coming soon. We will continue to explore the moral crossroads where power and conscience meet, because in the end it is not the size of the fortune that matters but the courage to do what is right.